We're back, amigos. This is Maria, and I'm Maria Cardona, and I'm here with my co-host, Andrea Mares. I'm so excited to welcome our next guest. She's a mother, an educator, and also candidate for Texas's 24th district, Candace Valenzuela. Candace, welcome to Maria. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Maria, it's a pleasure to be here, and it's so great to meet you too, Andrea.
Candace, this episode of Maria is focused on the millennial Latinx generation and how so many young Latinos are at the forefront of so many of the movements that are happening in the country. And you're one of those. If you are elected to Congress, you're going to be the first Afro Latina millennial in the United States House of Representatives. What will that mean for you? And more importantly, what do you think it will mean to younger generations of the Latinx community?
Well, it means that we are strengthening and broadening that representation. One of the things that I think the political world of the United States is coming to realize is that the Latinx community is not monolithic. We come from a lot of different countries. We have a lot of different backgrounds, and particularly when you're talking about Afro Latinidad, there is still a lot of variation there. People ask me if I'm Dominican or from the Caribbean, and I actually come with a very different set of issues, being distinctly African American and distinctly Mexican American. But what I can say, what we all have had in common within that community is that we rarely see ourselves represented in popular culture. We rarely see ourselves represented in the halls of power. And when you have a very monolithic view of Latinidad, uh, then you don't get the full spectrum of policies passed. The best kind of government is representative of all of its people, and that's what my representation means to me. It's not just about me, but it's about bringing the full spectrum of the American experience to Congress.
Something that I think that a lot of youthful folks are kind of engaging with is this concept of intersectionality, right? And I would love to hear a little bit about how your politics are necessarily informed by your experience as an Afro Latina, but also as just a human navigating the political world.
You spend a lot of time when you're straddling multiple worlds, being able to analyze them. And I think that that's been an advantage for me, as it's also been a source of difficulty at times too, because you always feel a little bit outside of yourself, never quite fully engaged. But I think in this moment, intersectionality is coming to the forefront in a way to help us engage more peacefully. When we're seeing the Black Lives Matter movement, when we're seeing a movement toward reforming our systems of immigration, people are stopping. They're no longer acting in silos. They're no longer saying, "Well, that's their problem, and we're going to leave them to it because I've got my own issues here." We're seeing intersectionality come into play in 2020 in a beautiful way, and I wish that it wasn't amongst such terrible, terrible tragedy. But this is a moment in which we need to have all hands on deck, and particularly for me, when I've always felt like I was a translator, and I don't just mean language, but in just culture. I feel like I'm finally a little bit more at home in this moment.
So, Candace, we're going to be 32 million Latinos eligible to vote in November, the largest ethnic voting bloc in the country. Talk about what that will mean for the kind of desperate change in leadership that we need, but also what does it mean for people to take that power and to actually use it?
It starts with that community grassroots movement, and we're seeing those across the country. But movement doesn't become policy until we have representation, right? And so taking ourselves to the ballot box, making sure that we organize our communities is just part of it. The other part is making sure that people that represent our communities are running for office. That means at every level. I'm talking about city council. I'm talking about our school boards, that's my heart's place because I was the first Black woman. I was the first Latina woman ever on my school board. We need to be looking at county offices too, because these issues are not just in a silo. They affect everyone, and in order to have that fully voiced, we need to be running as well as working.
Yes, representation is vital, especially as we evolve as a society. I myself didn't even consider like femininity as something within my grasp until I saw Beyonce dancing in a video of her Survivor when I was a kid, right? And so I mean, like that trans Latina identity kind of has really been baked inside of me only after seeing other people stand so with so much pride and orgullo in who they are, right? And so I'd love to kind of hear about your experience with developing youth or working within the education system, right? And really showing them how important politics are and how personal it can be.
You know, in this process of running for Congress, I feel that educator coming out, that teacher coming out, in the way that I engage younger communities, because I feel like I call myself a vanguard millennial. I was born in '84, and so I was kind of at the beginning of that movement there, and I was when I started teaching folks, I was teaching kids that were roughly just a few years younger than me. But that advocacy and having conversations with folks and understanding that those opinions are valid, that they're founded in reason, is something that I've taken with me to this campaign. So we have a huge fellowship program, and it's made up of people that look like my district, of high school students, of college students, but we're empowering them to know how to organize. We're empowering them to learn how to run campaign finance, which is something that we are definitely missing in the political experience. We have a lot of, that's the next step here, right? We need more representation. But in order to have culturally competent campaigns, we need people all around that candidate supporting them to support the community.
Candace, one of the things that I think is incredibly important as you are running for office is that you are breaking barriers, and that is never easy. Tell us about some of the challenges that you have faced as you talk to donors who aren't necessarily part of our community, as you talk to outside allies who want to help, but for whom perhaps you don't represent what in their minds is the quintessential winnable candidate, right? You are young, you're Afro Latina, you have a background that is perhaps not something that they might be familiar with. How do you deal with that?
We're testing a lot of boundaries in 2020. There are different levels of comfort with race in our society. So perhaps when you see somebody that looks like me, you're perfectly comfortable with me, raising kids, serving food. You may be perfectly comfortable with me, in your workplace. You may not necessarily be great with me. You might be great with me running for school board as a young mom, but you may not necessarily be great with that experience going to Congress, even if conceptually you say, we need more young people. We need more people of color. And then they look at you and you're like, maybe not you. We need, maybe you need 15 more degrees, and then maybe, just maybe, you're ready. Whereas if you have a young white male candidate, they won't necessarily talk about their youth. They won't talk about their qualifications. I'm not going to bring up examples here, but we've been seeing this in this process for many years. And so right now, there's the effort of regular campaigning, making sure that you do the work, making sure that you contact voters, making sure you get your message out, making sure that you're up on the issues. But on top of that, it's kind of like my life story. You spend your whole life being an ambassador to yourself, being an ambassador to communities that have never really had an actual conversation about what our experiences are like. And it's been particularly enlightening to see the levels that people are comfortable with. But I think we're making a lot of progress, even as it's slow and painful.
Candace, stay right there. We're going to have a lot more with you on the other side of the break. Amigos, don't go away. This is Maria.